Hello, my name is Lexy Davis. I'm a self-discovery coach, a yoga and meditation instructor, a love enthusiast, and a really playful human being. I serve people through my business, Alive to Enjoy, and this is Heart Snuggles, a holistic wellness podcast where I invite guests to drop into their heart space through authentic conversations and compassionate intentions, all in mini cuddly episodes, hoping that you connect to your truth in the most authentic version of yourself. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to Heart Snuggles. We're so happy you're here today. I brought a former coach and friend from a community that we're both in holisticism, so I'm so excited to have you on. So just go ahead and tell them who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm excited to be on. I think, we've been planning this for a bit, so it's really exciting to be here with you. I know it's been a little bit of time since we did some coaching together. So my name is Marielle, and I am a human design reader and coach. I'm actually more so classically trained in coaching. I just got my Human Potential Institute certification gone through. So now I have that little bit of backing to my coaching skills. But my heart, really started with human design back when the pandemic hit. So in the pandemic days, it was like the one guiding light to get me through the pandemic of like, wow, I can choose something different. So human design has been really pivotal in my life. And I was so drawn to it, even though I'm drawn to astrology. I was so drawn to human design because of how complex it is, but also how applicable and tactical it can be. So yeah, and so now I mostly do VIP coaching around human design as a framework. So it's been pretty exciting stuff.
That is so exciting. And I feel like most people don't know what human design is still. So take us through what it is in case they don't know.
Absolutely. So human design is kind of a conglomeration of multiple mystical modalities. The first being either what you can do Western or Vedic astrology. Within human design, it's either tropical or sidereal. And really, it's using all the same calculations as astrology. So, but the difference is it takes two sets of times. It takes your birthday time and then 3 months beforehand, which they say is when the soul enters the body. And then it combines it with these other methodologies. So you have the Chinese I Ching, the 64 hexagrams translates to the 64 gates in human design. You have the Tree of Life from Kabbalah, which translates to the 36 channels in human design. And then it's an evolved chakra system. So it takes the 7 chakras into 9 chakras. And each of the 64 gates is then activated, just like you have your regular zodiac signs and your, sun sign. They have an earth sign, which is different. And your moon, obviously your north and south nodes, etc. And then these gates are just activated along this chart. They're all placed along the centers, similar to the chakras, and then they get connected through channels. So yeah, it's a really cool system. Very lit up, very dynamic looking. There's, body graph and all that. So it's a pretty cool, very complex system.
I didn't even know all that you just said. I was like, whoa. Every time I hear about human design blows me away every single time. There's more and more and more to learn. And it's also kind of confusing because it feels hard to learn about it because there's not enough information out right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of, for me, just starting out, I started out very traditionally and took a couple of classes from the International Human Design School, which was founded by the original founder, who's since passed, Ra Uru Hu. And so I got a really good, strong foundation there. But if you've ever gone to one of these, taking one of these courses, they're very, very dense. And they are also very, very, they're almost like Bible literalists when it comes to his message. And they don't seem to like more of the modern perspective of human design, which I feel much more called to. So we're talking Jenna Zoe, we're talking Erin Claire Jones, Victoria Jane, different, a lot of different readers and experts out there who've kind of gone a little bit away from the main pack. And which is really cool because it's like when I talk about human design, when I teach about it a little bit, when I explain it to clients, like it's really about kind of finding what works. And within just the main system of human design, a lot of it is so literal, and they don't tell you to like leave what doesn't fit. And of course, there's conditioning, there's fear, there's a lot of things that are related to what might seem like it doesn't fit. But at the end of the day, if you're not meant to eat in direct sun, I am not going to tell you to eat in direct sun.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a very important to always have that space. It never feels good when you're told, those hard rules, and that like pushes me away too. So um that's beautiful that you found what works for you and like what feels best, and now you to translate that to more people, and it's such a great gift. So tell us some things that human design helps with, that people can use it for.
So human design. So the big thing about human design is that there are a few things that if you master those, if you get in alignment with those, you really need nothing else, which, I like because here's the basics. Here are the things that you can tactically do every day. And that really resides with your type, your strategy, and authority. And there's 5 types. So there's generators, there's the hybrid type manifesting generators, manifestors, projectors, and reflectors. And within that, they all have their own strategies. So generators and manifesting generators are to respond, and manifestors is to inform. Reflectors have to wait a whole lunar cycle. They're very special beings that don't really operate like anyone else. And then projectors, who are waiting for the invitation. And then there's also 9 other authorities that if you're emotional, it's about waiting for clarity, just waiting for time on decisions. Sacral is a yes or no gut response. Splenic is a whisper of an inner knowing that is very fast, and you have to kind of be a little bit in tune with it unless you don't catch it. You have ego projected, you have self projected, and you have environment. And it's all really just fascinating because it's going to tell you how to make decisions. It's going to tell you how to flow in alignment. It's going to tell you whether you should, wait to be valued and recognized. And it's once you master those few pieces, you don't need all the complex rest of it. But it is super fun and affirming. And that's the biggest thing, is like it needs to just be affirming. It needs to be giving you permission to be your own self and to do what you enjoy and do what feels good. So that's really the main, those main little tidbits of human design, that it's so important that if you're jumping in, to focus on those little bits before you jump down the rabbit hole, because when you jump down the rabbit hole, you're reading every single gate you have activated, and it's going to take you away from the really tangible things you can do just to feel really good about your life.
Yeah, and that's what I love about it the most, is like it just is like, oh, it makes sense why I am this way. Like I'm a manifesting generator, and it's like I have 30 things going on at once, and everyone's telling me not to do that and stop putting your fingers in all these pies. And my chart's like, no, that's right. Like that's what you are supposed to be doing. And I was like, whoa. And then all these other permission things. And what helped me the most was when you're like, follow what lights you up that day. And I was like, oh, what? I can do that? Like that feels the best. And when I'm forcing myself to do these tasks that like are draining me, then I don't get them done. It just is not right. And so giving me that permission was so freeing. And that's what I really love about human design too. It's like you connect so many dots that weren't there before, and you just are allowed to be who you are, like you were saying.
Yeah, and that's like the biggest thing for me. What I'm doing readings is, really kind of channel the intuitive powers that be, and really just deliver a reading that's going to be affirming, but also going to help understand, help the client understand like what's going to be a biggest conditioning, what's going to get in your way the most, from being who you want to be in this world and being who you're meant to be in this world. And it's such a fascinating way to kind of look at that. And, it's tangible. It'll help you understand if, is your self-worth going to be a big issue? Is knowing who you are going to be a big issue? And how to connect back, like you said, with what lights you up, what excites you, what inspires you, if you're not, take a projector, if you're not finding an invitation, then what are you doing? You're following what inspires you. You're following what you're doing, and you're showing up with it. you're sharing it, because that gives others a way to connect with you and provide that invitation that you're looking for. So, there's a lot of language within human design that feels limiting. And that's one reason why I'm like, people who are really confused about human design, it's like, get a reading, like sit down with someone, talk about it, because the information that's out there, like you said, there's not a lot of information, and the information is very much in a vacuum. You read about a generator, then you read about emotional authority, and then you read about this. And it's like, how do you connect the dots? Like, what's really important? What makes sense? And like I said, if you go down the rabbit hole, like you're going to be off on these crazy tangents that are going to just take you away from the strongest goodness that you'll find within some of the more simple pieces of it.
Yeah, I think that's so crucial. For sure the only time I've actually like really anything's landed is via readings because otherwise it just doesn't make sense. Or some of the Instagram things will be like, okay, that makes sense, and it's like manifesting generator this, but it's in someone else's words, it's not like me trying to learn on my own. But if you were to give us like a helpful tip, I guess, for each of the types of people, could you do that? Like something that's supportive for each one?
Yeah. So with generators, it's, the difference between manifesting generators and generators is that generators are much meant for kind of longer term gut commitments. They're more endurance beings. They're all guided towards mastery. So it's all about understanding your gut response. Even if you're an emotional authority, at the end of the day, your gut will still be there. After your highs and lows, your gut will still be there. And it's about understanding, what a gut response feels like for you, because not all people are guttural noises and things like that. As a pure generator myself, it's knowing what is exciting for me and what brings me energy, and allowing that to be the thing that I do. In my traditional coaching background, sometimes it's like, oh, getting the thing you want to do the least out of the way first. And I'm like, sometimes that's great. Sometimes it's not. If you're finding that you're a little more depleted, you need to find the thing that excites you the most and do that first, because it's going to create more energy to do the rest. So that would be my tidbit for mostly pure generators. When it comes to manifesting generators, I would say, because they're the true multitasker, multi-passionate people. Not to say everybody else isn't multi-passionate, but they're the ones who can toggle among many different things. And it's just it's giving yourself permission to really go from one thing to the next. As soon as your excitement changes, to be able to pivot in the moment and follow what excites you next. When it comes to projectors, like I said, it's all about what's inspiring. When they're not finding an invitation, when they feel like they're waiting, it's about doing what feels inspiring and not draining. A lot of the times we hear a lot of this language about how much limited energy they have. And you know what? There are professional athletes that are projectors. So it's really not a limitation, in the sense that if you're doing something that you really truly enjoy, that inspires you, you're not going to drain your finite energy engine. That's really meant for doing things when you're directly connected with other people, more of the work that is, quote unquote, draining. That's what your finite energy and work is for. So in the meantime, like when you're not receiving those invitations, it's all about doing what inspires you, that you really enjoy, that doesn't feel draining, and sharing that. That's the biggest thing, is that people will find you if you are showing who you are and showing yourself and showing up. And then when it comes to manifestors, so manifestors are, everyone envies the manifestor, because they're the only ones that are really 100% coming from an internal urge place and taking that and starting something new, initiating something new. So it's really about understanding and trusting that internal place and that internal urge, and knowing where that energy comes from, and taking that moment and then using their authority to understand if it's the right thing to do. And their not self is all about anger, and they want peace. So it's about understanding, like, what does peace mean to you? A lot of the times it's in that strategy of informing, just to let people know, hey, I'm doing this thing. I'm not here to explain it to you. I'm not here to justify it to you. I'm just going to go do that thing and then do it. And with reflectors, reflectors are very different beings. They're not, unlike all the other types, they're not conditioned by other people as much as they're conditioned by the transits, and especially the moon cycle. So it's a lot of it is like, when it's a big decision, when you're making a bigger decision about an opportunity, about where you're going to move, about a relationship long term, It's about giving yourself that 28-day moon cycle to really feel through every single gate, because it goes through all 64 gates in 28 days, to make sure that that decision still feels good. And so in the short term, it's, you can't always wait 28 days. You're not going to plan your next, month of meals after you feel how good that meal plan feels. But it's allowing yourself to understand what decision needs more time, and giving yourself that grace of time and that opportunity of time. And, that's a big part of being a reflector, is being able to give yourself that time.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And it's so great too, because once you learn about yourself, you're like, all right, this is what I need. And a lot of us struggle to figure out what our needs are. And what, that's such a big thing that I used to struggle with big time. And so, like, this is such good clarity for me. And then I understand everyone else too in my life. Like, once I get to know their human design, I'm like, okay, I specifically know that this is a quick thing that I can help you with if you don't know it yourself, and vice versa. And I think it's just really helpful because it's so simple. What you just said, all of that is very simple to do. And it's not like this big thing that I have to like figure out. It's like, oh yeah, it makes sense. I can do that, and I can support someone else in their own truth too.
And I love that you say that, because a lot of the work, I guess, around human design, or kind of one of the best things about interacting with others, is really just kind of being able to accept that other people operate differently than you do. And this does give a really good framework. It's like you can allow a manifestor to do what they're meant to do, what they want to do, and give them the peace and space to do it without asking them questions or providing any kind of hindrance to their process, and just letting them be and do in their own time and space. And that's like, and when it comes to different connections too, it's like there's really, like, we're meant to be collaborative beings. That's why we're not meant to have every single gate lit up and have every single channel. Is that there's, in human design, there's, when you overlay two charts, there's, electromagnetic channels, there's compromise channels, there's different types, of different interactions with each other. And it's like, the beauty there is that, especially with electromagnetic channels, it's where you have two hanging gates. One person has one side of the gate, the other person has, or one gate and on a channel, and the other person has the other side, and you light it up together. And sometimes that means you even light up a new center together. You define it together, and that gives you opportunity of gifts to work together. So human design also offers this beautiful level of collaboration, and we're meant to work with each other. But also, when it comes to that, it's meant to understand how the other person operates, so that we're not throwing each other off into not self, of frustration, of anger, of bitterness, of disappointment. And, it's such a beautiful thing when we can come together with a little more understanding about how each other operates, so that we can, live much more in harmony.
Yeah, it's huge. And it's really cool. Like, I haven't done that yet, but you definitely told me about that before, about how like the gates can open with someone else. And that's why some connections feel so good or flow so well. And it just like, it all makes sense. And it just puts language to what is felt, but not spoken. So that's really nice, because that's always such a great feeling. I don't know about you guys, but I know I've been struggling to find inner peace lately, and thankfully I discovered Open, a mindfulness studio for everyone. As a yoga teacher, it's been difficult to find an online studio that actually shifts my well-being, and wow, let me tell you, Open transforms your mind through body and breath in an immersive space designed to take you to the here and the now, no matter where you are or where you begin. Open offers live and on-demand breathwork, meditation, yoga, and Pilates guided by the leaders in mindfulness, centered on music and rooted in community. Hello, two of my favorite things. And their aesthetics are on point. So as always, I'm getting you the best of the best. So I got you 30 days free. Just use the code HeartSnuggles and let your ritual begin now. And I'd love to hear, like, can you just explain like one gate to us that's fun to look at, or yeah.
Sure. I'll talk about one of the gates that I have in my incarnation cross. Everyone has an incarnation cross, and it's the four gates that make up your personality and design side, your sun and your earth. And my one of three out of the four are all connected to channels, and this is the one that's not connected. It's the heart center. It's the gate 51 of shock. And it's like in the way that you're being, like on one side, it's that you're going to have like physical impact with things, which is almost, it's funny, not funny, because I was in several car accidents when I was younger. And it's like one of those things that you're going to have that like physical impact with life, but you're also going to be one of those people that's going to say things so, have like a shocking level of the way you kind of share things. And that's been definitely one that's been really, really interesting to explore for myself, just because of how it does have that level of impact and that level of shock and kind of jarring, people with the way that you deliver.
I definitely experienced that too in my life. But that's so cool how you could see it in the physical and the emotional or mental. And then can you explain like what a channel is as well?
So a channel, so what happens is that you form a channel when you have both gates activated on each side of that channel. And that channel then lights up and provides some level of energy. It may be more palpable energy, like if it's connected to a motor center or two motor centers. But it's really just connecting those two. Usually, sometimes it's like the positive and negative charge that kind of come together. And then also what happens is that it defines the two centers on each side of of those two gates. So it provides energy to those and causes it to be defined. One of the channels that I have defined is all about beginnings, but it's all about completion. So I have the gate of beginnings, which is 53. And on the other side of that is the one of more of completion. So you can see how those two energies connect to be able to kind of start things, and I have to move through things in cycles. But also the gift that's there is I help people create new things. And that lights up both the root and the sacral center. So it provides both energy, the energy to get things started, to bring them into momentum, well, and it also creates or connects to the sacral kind of fuel, that sustainable life force energy that defines manifesting generators and generators, and provides that like sustainable long-term energy that, is really only there if you're really being lit up by life. But
That's so cool. It's just so fascinating, complex. And then what are the centers? Can you explain, like maybe pick one center?
sure, I mean, I'll go through
Okay.
all of them real quickly. So there's two pressure centers. Those are the ones on the one on the top and the one on the bottom. So the one on the bottom is the root center, and that's all about momentum, getting things started. And then if you move to the side, you have the emotional center. Like I said, that's the first center that dictates authority, and it's the center of emotional awareness. And this center creates emotional waves, which are really high and low waves, of high being, hope, everything is possible, and a low being more like pain and nothing is working out kind of energy. And it's very much what I like to call, it's like a mood state. And then you flowed kind of, towards the center to the sacral center, which is that life force, sustainable energy, that sacral fuel that's both creativity and sexual energy. And then moving across again, you have the spleen, which is all about bodily awareness. So you're more of your bodily instinct and that level of intuition. Moving up, then you have the identity center, or the G center. And that's really about who you are, your sense of self, and your life direction, your love of life, and self love. And then moving slightly to back closer to the emotional center is the heart ego center, which is all about motivation, willpower, and your heart's desires. Continue going up, you have the throat, which is the center of manifestation, which is what is defined in manifestors connected to a motor that is not the sacral. Sacral can't be defined. And it's also the center of expression. So how you express yourself. When it's defined, you have kind of a way that you express yourself. Sometimes it might be more verbally, more artistically, that kind of thing. Going up further, you have the ajna, or the mind, which is the center of conceptualization, rationalization, perspectives, opinions, beliefs. And then on the very top, the last center, the pressure center, is the head, and it's a center of inspiration. So it's all that information that comes through. When you have it defined, you kind of have a sense of what really matters to you. So that's it in a nutshell, very much of a nutshell.
Yes. And can you explain like when something's not defined, how it doesn't, like what that means?
Yeah. So starting with defined, it means that like the energy is coming from you and projecting outward. So that's something when people have a center undefined or open that they can pick that up. And when it's open, it's like you're taking in the energy from other defined centers when you're around them. So when it comes to open centers and undefined centers, a lot of the times you have to realize that when you're picking up on that kind of energy, it's not yours. This is something that, especially like when it comes to emotional energy, to realize that you can really create boundaries around that and identify as emotions, that emotional wave, as not a part of yourself, and create boundaries around not taking that in and amplifying it. Because a lot of the times it's not just taking it, a lot of the time we amplify that level of emotionality. So it's really about having a really healthy relationship with that and understanding that. But there's a gift to that as well. It creates a lot of wisdom. And in this particular center, the emotional center, creates emotional empathy. So you have an ability, because you've experienced all the levels of different emotional waves from everyone around you, and it allows you to really help others kind of see and move through their own waves. And it's similar with almost with all the other open and undefined centers that you may have, that you'll be taking in that energy of other people and then are, given that empathy. Like with the mind center, you're given the empathy of being able to be very open minded and see things from many, many different perspectives. So you just have to create a boundary around that kind of, with the mind. There's mental anxiety that comes with that. Speaking on a personal level, my boyfriend has the ajna defined, and he's very set in his own beliefs. He is a little more easy to deal with because he does understand that it's pretty much his own personal truth, but it is unwavering, and it's almost impossible for someone like me who is an undefined ajna to really have a conversation around convincing him there's other perspectives, because that's not what it's meant to be. And while I can see every side of the coin on, different perspectives and belief systems and opinions, when someone has it defined, they really have a set way that they see that.
So interesting. So is that saying that it can't be, it like won't be changed then? Really?
I think it really matters to different people, because I've had some with defined ajnas that they have to see all the different perspectives before they make their own kind of mind. And I feel like that's the way that they're defined. With my boyfriend in particular, I feel like he does the amount of understanding that he needs to where he finds, a firm perspective. And I don't think that their minds cannot be changed, but they have to go through something experiential to really understand that there's a different side. And it's not something that you can debate with them about. But I don't want to say that nothing is immovable, that no one is capable of changing their own belief system. But I think that it has to do a lot more with immersing themselves in that experience to understand a different perspective than it is about having a friendly debate, because I've lost many of those with defined ajnas. So
Yeah, I didn't know that. I feel like now it makes sense with, because the stubbornness and some people and the closed mindedness drives me personally wild, because I'm like, like at least just like open up your mind. But yeah, it's interesting that that's just how they're programmed, and just who they are. So yeah.
yeah. And there's also a level to it. If it's if they have an undefined ajna, there's this pressure to be certain. When you have when you have the center open or undefined, you have to kind of be really cool with being uncertain. But then the conditioning comes in where it's like everything tells you to pick a side, everything tells you must be certain about things. And to be intelligent, you must be certain about something. And that's just not really the case at all. And so that could be also where you have someone who's undefined that's so heavily conditioned where they feel that they have to believe in something or believe a particular side or perspective. And that's just what's end up getting in the way. And so you can have it both sides. You can have the defined mind who is very stubborn, let's say, in their opinion, or just very just set in their determined in their belief system. Or you can have someone who just feels that pressure all the time, be certain about something. And they become almost ruthless because they're taking in that energy, and that others are saying that you have to have this level of belief. And it's like, I think part of the job, I guess, of experts and human design readers is to really open up people to where it's like, if you have this open, you don't have to be certain. You have to become uncomfortable or comfortable with uncertainty. And that's okay. That's the way you're meant to be. You have this fluidity in belief, and it's a beautiful thing.
So good. I love that. And that's what the beauty of like getting a reading is. It, you get to ask questions and change your perspective on things and learn about things. And so if something isn't going right, you can look at your chart and see why, or like, maybe get some answers for sure. So I know that I have the middle four are open. I don't remember what that means. Like, can you briefly explain it?
Um, or, well, I know that you definitely have the sacral because you're a manifesting generator.
Activated. Sorry, I meant the four in the, like, not the top two, but the four down.
The four down are the ones that are activated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know that you're a manifesting generator. So you have to have your throat defined. You have to have your sacral defined, and you have to have some kind of motor to your throat. So when it's your sacral, I believe you have your sacral, your identity center, obviously your throat center, and I just don't remember what is. You might. Do you remember if you're an emotional authority or not?
No, I'm sacral.
Okay, so then you have the sacral, the splenic center. Maybe it's hard to say without looking at it, but it's when you don't. So if you have what's in the middle, then you definitely have your open head, your open ajna. So a lot of that is you're just taking in all the information in the world without a filter.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're taking in all the information out of the world without a filter, it's like you have to figure out, what really matters, because you don't have that filter about what matters. And we talked a lot about that open mind. So, it's really just about embracing uncertainty and loving the fact that you have an open mind. You can see everything and you just play with ideas, you play with concepts. What you bring in is that you can see everything from different perspectives, which is definitely a different level of intelligence. I mean, I think that's, both sides of the coin, of course, are intelligent, but it's like you have a beauty of openness, which makes you be able to access all of that information and all of that. And we're continually, as open-headed people, just being inspired by everything. So you get to play mentally, but that comes with a lot of pressure as well, because you have this mental pressure of all these questions from everybody else. So it's about kind of mitigating that pressure and understanding like that you're not going to have all the answers, not all the questions you're going to need to answer, things like that. And when you have openness on the bottom, and we know for sure emotional center. So when you have the root open, the root is all about stress and more physical pressure. And that's going to come with deadlines and hurry. And when you have it open, it's harder to be grounded because that level of energy coming from the root is going to ebb and flow depending on who you're around. So you kind of have to create boundaries with the amount of physical pressure that you're under. You have to understand that, you're going to have to find your own timing that may not look like other people, and also separate yourself from that conditioning that other people are going to tell you have to hurry. It's fast, fast, fast. And then kind of accept that that's something that's going to, you're not always going to have that same level of pressure to get things moving, to get things rolling. But like I said, everything has empathy. You're going to have empathy for that level of stress and pressure, especially when you can identify as external to yourself and help people who are feeling overly pressured. You're going to pick up on that root energy. And it's not to say that there's no conditioning outside of when you're defined, because I find that I have my root defined, and that correlates directly to adrenal glands. And I've experienced, heavy adrenal fatigue in my life. And I realized that, especially having learned about human design, that is something that I'm putting pressure on myself to keep up, to be more fast and hurried and getting things done quicker than I'm defined to be. I'm supposed to be more grounded and kind of, not necessarily quote unquote in the flow, but have, things get done when they're supposed to get done. I start things when I'm supposed to start them. I don't need to add extra stress and pressure to myself. And that is what I believe has gotten me into adrenal fatigue. That and everybody else's level of what hurry looks like for them. And they're out of whackedness with their own pressure and deadlines. And then with the emotional center, like we said, we talked about that a little bit, but it's all about other people being on an emotional wave and you picking up on that and amplifying that. So it's all really about understanding, what is and what is not yours emotionally, because you're going to have emotions. It doesn't mean that you're not a person with emotions, of course. That's when we lean back to the not self themes and the signatures of being a generator, manifesting generator is our signature is satisfaction and our not self is frustration. So these are the emotions that you kind of lean into to know whether you're in alignment or not. If you feel satisfied at the end of the day, ready to go to sleep and just knock, out, then you know that you had a satisfying day, that you were in alignment. If you feel frustrated, any level of frustration, that is emotion that is 100% yours and yours to figure out. And, your ability, it's really just a signpost. It's not a bad thing. It just means to reevaluate where you're putting your energy. If you're putting your energy into things you feel you should be doing. And sometimes those don't come off as big hell no's, so it's all about kind of understanding those emotions on their own. But back to the emotional center, it's about taking space when you're around someone emotional, because not a lot of people who are emotional realize that, especially when they're in a low emotional state. That's a sign to kind of move through it on their own, because you have so much power and so much energy in that space to kind of bring down a crowd, bring down the people around you. And it's just a signal to kind of give yourself time and space. And when when someone's an emotional high, fantastic. Sometimes we want to ride off of that emotional high as well, because then we feel like everything is possible too. But also identifying it's like, okay, but still not my emotions, but kind of fun to be around, So that's a little bit of the gist around your openness.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so how would you say you would support someone who maybe like should take time on their own, but they're with someone else? Like, what would be a way to encourage that instead of like being a dumping ground for them to just dump everything onto you?
From the emotional perspective or the other non-emotional, or both?
Yeah, the one that I guess I'm saying, if you're outside, if the person who is emotional and is like being, let's say, really low, and they should take some time for themselves, but they're trying to like, just dump it off onto someone else. The person that they're dumping onto, how should they support them? It's a hard question.
Honestly, I think within any kind of relationship, it's kind of about communication and just gently saying, hey, like, I see where you're at, and, maybe just suggest to take a moment. And also, you can always say, hey, I need to take a moment for myself, and make it more about you and creating your own boundaries, because if that other person isn't receptive to understand how they're affecting you, you have to kind of take it in your own hands and say, hey, as gracefully as you can in whatever situation you're in, just to say, hey, you need a moment to kind of cleanse and like, communicate that. You communicate you have a need of like, and sometimes it depends on the person. May not be able to be so incredibly honest to say, hey, I'm picking up on your emotions right now and I need space from you. But just taking our own needs and our own self-care and our own selves to heart and know what we need to survive in that moment, to say hey, and ask for it for ourselves and for ourselves and what we need.
Totally. Yeah. I've been both people in that situation. Like I've been the one that's just like, take all my shit. Let me just dump it all onto you. I don't want to deal with it. And then I've also been I'm mostly the person that just absorbs. I'm like, come here, tell me everything. Let me take the pain away from you. And so, yeah, working on navigating both. And it's definitely difficult, but it's so empowering. And I think that's so true. What you said is like figuring out your own needs. And every time that we come from ourselves, it's always like, it's received so much better to the other person because then they don't get defensive.
Yeah. And it is about understanding your own needs. And you have to advocate for yourself as much as possible. And like I said, sometimes these people, someone who's emotional doesn't really understand. And, part of that is is helping them, understand and what in whatever way that we can and communicate that.
Yeah, so good. Amazing. So please share with everyone how they can find you and what you're offering in case they want to get a reading.
Yeah. So I definitely do, my big focus in terms of my coaching program, I do an 8-week intensive, but I still definitely do readings, all the time. The easiest way to reach me is actually on Instagram at the moment. My website is forever under construction. So I'm at the.hd coach. So THE.HDCOACH. And that's the easiest way to find me.
And will you tell us about your 8-week program?
Yeah, so it's all human design. It's all human design focused and based. It's a 5-pillared program. So going from energy, and really that's about your energy type, your strategy, and other factors that kind of contribute to the way that you exist within your own energy sphere. To authority is the next pillar, which I call discernment, since it's about really discerning what's right for you or not right for you. The next level is conditioning and mindset. So that's really about the centers, whether they're open, undefined, or defined. And then what I call internal and external operating systems, but those are the variables and arrows that you'll see on the top of your body graph. And definitely around directionality there, but also there's, it talks about environments and digestion and different things like that as well. And then last but not least is your gifts and purpose. So that's where we talk about profile, incarnation cross, and channels to really see, what you have really truly activated in your chart and you have energy behind and what you're really here to do.
So good. That is going to be juicy. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being on this podcast and for sharing your gifts and having this coaching program. And I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you so much. It was so great to be here and so happy to share this with you.
Yay.